YouTube channel, Braintree District Council's committees. This channel has been set up to make sure that anyone can observe our democratic meetings. Please therefore remember this meeting can be watched at any time by anyone with an internet connection. There are subtitles via the YouTube channel. These are generated by broadcast. These are not the responsibility of the council, nor can we guarantee their accuracy. Webcasting officer, please can you confirm that broadcast has commenced? Thank you.
The broadcast has now started. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Extraordinary Meeting of Full Council on Monday the 15th of March 2021. Before we commence with the proceedings this evening, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings, and these are as follows. Please only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Please let the Chairman know that you wish to speak through the chat function. The Chairman will introduce the speakers in the order at which the request to speak has been made, unless there is a point of order at which we will give way. Please minimise all distractions while you're in the meeting. Members, you are asked to mute your microphone when you're not speaking and to consider turning off your video if you have interference to your connection to the meeting. Please bear in mind that there may be a slight delay in speakers and other attendants hearing you. When referring to officers' reports, please quote the relevant page and paragraph number. There is no private business for this evening's meeting of full council. However, if it is necessary to move into private session, members are reminded that it is their responsibility to make sure their venue and connections are private. If you lose connection at all during the meeting, please rejoin the meeting and I will readmit you as soon as possible. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the access to information regimes of the FOI, EIR, and is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation, and the Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified with a prefix of CLLR before their name, with the exception of the Chairman. There are officers in attendance and they have a prefix of officer. Officers will only speak when invited to do so. This evening, we have two registered speakers for public question time, and they are identified with a prefix of PQT. Registered speakers can only speak when invited by the Chairman. There is a meeting facilitator, which is myself, and a minute taker. Chairman, we have had no apologies for this evening, and I can confirm that the meeting is quorum and may proceed. I now hand over to the Chairman, Councillor Angela Kilmartin. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Emma. Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Angela Kilmartin, and I'm the Chairman of this Council, and I will be chairing this extraordinary meeting of full Council. I'd like to open this virtual extraordinary meeting of full Council by welcoming members of the public who are viewing this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel. It's nice and clear, actually. I enjoy watching it. I'm being assisted by a meeting facilitator who will help me identify when people want to speak, and I'll manage the notifications through the chat function. I can't see all of you members, obviously, so I ask that you do use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak or raise a procedural point. Members, can I clarify that during this meeting, when asked for agreement, silence will be taken as assent on those items to note? Where a vote is required, these will be conducted using the roll call. At the appropriate time, each member will be called in turn to indicate their vote, and at the end, I'll be assisted by the monitoring officer in determining the outcome. This is not a recorded vote, and the votes will not be recorded as part of the minutes to this meeting. If on any item before this meeting members do require a recorded vote to be undertaken, then this must be requested in accordance with the provisions set out within the Council's constitution. Now, members, we have 3 hours set aside for this meeting, and I'd be extremely grateful if you can keep your debates concise in order to assist with ensuring that we conclude the meeting within the time allocated. So I beg again, if somebody else has made your point already, please just pass on or cancel yourself from the chat. Members, due to the level of concentration required during these virtual meetings, if it is appropriate to do so, I will call for a 5-minute recess at an appropriate point in the agenda. In calling the recess, I'll be seeking members' agreement to do so at that time. And it worked well before, so hopefully we'll do well this time. Please can I advise members that in order to ensure a fair approach to the debates this evening, I will ask that everyone indicates they want to speak by using the chat function. I will then, rather than take them in the order they appear, I'll be using my discretion to take members from each of the political groups in turn. I think that's fairer and it's much more interesting for all of us. Finally, members, can I remind you, please, that as this is an extraordinary meeting of full council, we are confined only to the business that's on this agenda. There is no cabinet report to full council, nor an opportunity to ask questions to the cabinet. All of that will take place at the next ordinary meeting of full council, which is on the 29th of March, coming up a couple of weeks. Thank you then, members. So I'm going to proceed to the first item of business, which is apologies for absence. And I don't think I've received any, have I? No?
No, Chairman, we
No.
have given all apologies that we've
Yes.
received. Thank you.
So thank you very much then. No more apologies. I'm going on to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Members, for this item, I'll be seeking your agreement. So silence is going to be your assent. And I want to ask you, do any members have any objection to the approval of the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting of full council, which was held on the 22nd of February, 2021? Any objections, please? If you want to speak, please use the chat function. And I'm going to listen then for silence. Very good. Thank you very much. That means we're going straight on to item 3, which is declarations of interests. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest, or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare for this evening? If so, please state the item and the nature of your interest. And I'm seeing some coming up. Councillor Abbott wants to declare, followed by Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just for clarity, I'm a member of Essex County Council and a member of the Essex Climate Action Commission. And in my role as a parish councillor, I am supporting a number of tree planting projects which may become part of the Essex Forest Initiative, which is also run by Essex County Council.
Thank you. Councillor Unsworth then.
Thank you. Just for clarity, both the speakers are known to me. Nothing other than that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do know both the speakers, but more significantly, I have a non-pecuniary interest in relation to item 7, cycling. I'm a member of the Earlscombe to Kelvedon Cycling Planning Group.
Okay. Thank you. Now Councillor Schwer, followed by Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to declare an interest in the fact that one of the members of the public speaking tonight has commented on my Twitter page. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening. A non-pecuniary interest in 2 speakers, Colin Ritchies and Michael Staines, who are known to me. I'm also a member of Essex County Council. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I have now Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Butland. Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, just I wanted to declare a DPI because I know one of the speakers this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I declare a non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council.
Chairman, before you take the next member, can I ask for Mrs. Wilson to clarify their interest? I heard a DPI. Is that the case, or did you mean a NPI, a non-pecuniary interest?
Can you clarify, please?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Emma.
So, Mrs. Wilson, you are declaring a non-pecuniary interest. Thank you very much. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I can't remember. Did Councillor Butland? Yes, he did. Councillor Thorogood is next.
Yeah, just a declaration to say that I know, or both public speakers are known to me. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weeks. Please unmute. Councillor Weeks.
Hello. Yes, I know of both speakers.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schmidt and Councillor Wright. Councillor Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Member of Essex County Council.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Wright.
I know both the speakers, and I'm also a member of Riverhall Parish Council, who are doing a tree planting exercise.
Chairman, could I please ask you to re-invite Councillor Unsworth? He's messaged me to say he needs to make a further element to his declaration of interest, please.
Councillor Unsworth, could you please come again?
Apologies, Chair. Yes, I meant to add that I'm also on the Earlscombe to Kelvedon cycling group. Thank you.
Right, and now I've got Councillor Hicks.
Hello, Councillor Hicks. Yes, a non-pecuniary interest in, I know of the two speakers from previous meetings.
Right. Anybody else? Speak now or for hold your peace. No, I don't have anybody else. Thank you very much, everybody. Councillor Sue Wilson's come in with another interest.
Yeah, just to say that I'm also a member of the Cycle Route Committee in Earlscombe to Cockersham.
All right, thank you. Anybody else having second reasons to come in? No, no. So I'm declaring there are no more declarations. And if you think of one, come in at the appropriate moment when it's being discussed. I'll proceed now to item 4, public question time. Now, public question time, we do have 2 registered speakers members for this evening's meeting. Each speaker has 3 minutes to make their statement. And can I remind members that you've received the statement, and in the event that the speakers lose their connection to the meeting, their statements will be read by the meeting facilitator in their absence. So the first speaker, members, this evening is Mr. Michael Staines, and he will be making a statement in respect of agenda item 6, which is the draft climate change strategy. So now, hello, Mr. Staines. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And would you like to unmute your microphone? And then you have 3 minutes to make your statement. After you've made your statement, I'll invite you to unmute. Sorry, to mute yourself then. But now we'll look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Excellent. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Terrific. I'd like to compare the cycling and climate change strategies. The cycling paper reads well, and we already have the grassroots initiative of the EC2K route. A need was seen, and local people then set out to deliver it quickly, working with landowners, community supporters, and getting funds from a range of sources. And that's it, started. In contrast, the climate change strategy seems to be, pun intended, more about hot air and delay than action. It fails to mention the Rivenhall incinerator, which is the equivalent of the climate elephant in the room. Braintree could soon have the 3rd largest incinerator in the UK, but it has no strategy to address the 600,000 tonnes of CO2 per year it will emit, let alone the lower air quality from the daily increase in HGVs. We need to stop the incinerator becoming operational and quickly develop a smart strategy to really address climate change. We simply cannot risk waiting until 2030 to find out we did not mitigate the CO2 produced here in this district. The Green and Independent Group proposed using £250,000 of the new Homes Bonus money to fund new community woodlands, but that was recently voted down. At that meeting, we were told to wait for the climate strategy. Well, now we have it, it seems rather anticlimax, because the ambition is limited to 3% or £15,000 for trees, and there's no mention of the incinerator at all. One young tree absorbs just 6 kilograms of CO2 a year. So how many trees are we needed to offset the 600 million kilograms of CO2 per year just coming from the Rivenhall incinerator? BDC's approach doesn't join up, as it confuses the emissions that council activities produce and the district as a whole. For example, the Horizon 120 warehouses will only increase the volume of HGV movements through the district, as will the proposed major gravel extraction sites and, of course, the incinerator HGV traffic. Let's be ambitious and smart. Smart is specific. Focus minds using the incinerator emissions. Smart is measurable. Rivenhall will generate 600,000 tonnes of CO2 every year on its own. Smart decides actions needed. So let's find the land for tree planting, invite volunteers, and secure funding such as the New Homes Bonus and working with Essex County Council and beyond to fund the effort. Smart is realistic and time-bound. Why not aim to address 50% of potential Rivenhall incinerator emissions within 3 years and 80% within 5 years of now, so that the trees planted can begin absorbing CO2 quicker and increase as they mature. We can't plant trees until October, so let's use the time until then to consult the smart plan with residents, develop and present the strong district business case to Essex County Council, and then negotiate hard to secure the material funding we need to address the problem that they've given us. Let's not wait for government legislation. This extraordinary meeting was presumably called to give the public confidence that the environment and economy are safe in your hands, but they're not. The strategy completely omits to mention the incinerator elephant in the room and does not address the unacceptable amount of waste currently being sent to landfill and incineration already. Will our brightest future be a green one or an alternative nightmare where Braintree District is best known for its huge waste incinerator, trucks and trash? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Staines. Thank you. We heard everything. And the next speaker this evening is Mr. Colin Riches. I hope I've pronounced that right. And he will also be making a statement in respect of agenda item 6, the draft climate change strategy. So hello, Mr. Riches. Please, can you unmute? Hello there. Can you unmute your microphone? And you've got 3 minutes, like Mr. Staines had, to make your statement. And after you've made it, do please mute yourself up again. Thank you very much, Mr. Riches. Your turn.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Good evening, Chairman and members, and thank you for letting me speak this evening. I'm broadly in agreement with the points made in paragraphs 2.4, 3.1 and 3.2 of your report. It totally makes sense that Braintree Council cannot on its own solve the climate emergency. I therefore have a couple of questions for you and a couple of suggestions. The first question, number 1, is how does the Council plan to be an effective community leader? And by which measures will the Council judge itself as being successful? My second question is in relation to a recent tweet by Councillor Schweer. He highlights a 1,852 tonne reduction in carbon dioxide emissions from Braintree District Council, which sounds impressive. It is certainly better than no reduction, so thank you. However, when compared to the emissions of the district as a whole, how much of a reduction is it? I think context is important. For example, if you think about it, an Olympic swimming pool contains a lot of water compared with a bath, but it's insignificant when you compare that to the water content of the North Sea. I've got a couple of suggestions for improvements and ideas that might make Braintree District Council a good local leader in relation to this. One is to have a green schools programme across the district linked to tree planting, improve cycling for kids and them auditing their carbon footprint. The council could offer prize money for both primary and secondary schools in the district, which could also extend to volunteer youth groups who show that they are also taking the lead in this important area. My second suggestion is for consideration of an Australian-style variable speed limit outside of schools, the idea being that the speed limit would drop to 20 miles per hour at the start and end of the school day. This would make cycling safer for kids and should encourage better use of cycling, and hopefully that all of the health benefits from that would be of benefit to our kids and would see more people cycling into adulthood. So I hope you'll take consideration of my suggestions and I look forward to hearing your response.
That's very kind. Thank you very much, Mr. Riches. Thank you very much for your statement. Thank you, both of you. As both speakers have made a statement on draft climate change strategy, which we are debating this evening, I'm not going to ask the Cabinet member, Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, to respond separately to the statements under this item. So Councillor Mrs. Schmidt may respond to the statement, I suggest, as part of agenda item 6, when she'll have a lot to say. Thank you very much, Mr. Staines and Mr. Riches, and the meeting facilitator will now remove you from the meeting. However, I would encourage you to watch the remainder of the council meeting via the council's YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us and good night.
Chairman, I can confirm the public question time speakers have been removed from the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Members, there are no further speakers for this session of public question time. So I'm now going to proceed to the next item of business, which is announcements and statements from me and from the leader of the council. Now, item number 5 then, it's with great sadness that I advise you of the death of a former colleague, Elwyn Bishop, who passed away peacefully on the 23rd of February this year at the age of 90. Personally, I never knew him. I joined council afterwards, but such have been the commendations that we have several things to say. Elwyn Bishop was elected to the council in May 1991, and he served continuously until April 2015. A total of 24 years, representing the former Braintree East ward. Elwyn was also vice chairman of the council in 1995-96 and then chairman of the council in 96-97. He served on various committees, including Braintree Area Committee, which he was chairman of in 2002 and 3, the Local Plan Panel and the Regulatory Committee. Elwyn also served continuously on the Planning Committee from its inception in 2007 until 2015. Elwyn was also an Essex County Councillor representing Braintree East between 1993 and 2001 and Braintree Town between May 2005 and 2009. This is a tremendous history of service to this area, and I pay my own respects for this. But first, I'd like to invite Councillor Mann, who knew him well, to say a few words. Councillor Mann, do unmute your microphone and speak to us.
Elwyn's time in local government was his second period of public service. He was elected to this council, as you've said, in 1991, already having chalked up 35 years in teaching, including 20 years as a head teacher in Chelmsford. I think Elwyn was a model for any councillor to follow. Community-minded, principled, decent, committed, conscientious, loyal, and supremely well organised. As you said, he served here for 6 terms, 24 years, doubling up as a county councillor for half that time. And he was indeed a key councillor in 2 Labour administrations, vice chair, chair of the council, and chair or vice chair of several other standing committees. Now, he might have come across as mild in disposition, but Elwyn was above all a fighter. He won his first county seat in 93, one that was considered impossible for Labour. He wore out no less than 3 pairs of shoes, pounding round Fearing, Kelvedon, achieving what was then considered a sensational gain. And as some of you will know, later on, we were in awe, absolute awe of his battling recovery from those terrible accident injuries. Injuries that he himself made light of, injuries that would have completely finished a lesser man. It's this personal courage that particularly stands out for me. And I'm pleased and I'm proud to pay tribute to such a brave colleague and friend. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. It's all very moving. I have some other people who would like to say things, and I'm going to start with Councillor Butland and then invite Councillor Abbott and Councillor Pell. So, Councillor Butland, would you like to unmute your microphone?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We on this side remember Elwyn Bishop with a great deal of affection. He was a strong opponent. But he was very principled, and was also always was polite in the way in which he put forward his arguments. He was a great fighter for his community, and he brought a lot of wealth and experience. I have a particular relationship with Elwyn because, Madam Chairman, I've fought 15 elections so far, and so far I've only lost one. And that was to Elwyn in 2005 in the county council election. And I have to say, I could not have lost to a nicer opponent. He won't mind me, I'm sure, just saying that I did actually beat him 4 years later. But I know that Elwyn had that sense of humour. We also shared a love of cruising. We would very often share experiences and cruises that we had been on. But it was never any good me asking Elwyn where he was going on the next cruise, because he would always say, it'll be up to Agnes to say where we're going, etc. And Agnes would have to come along and tell me. And Agnes, of course, was a huge support to Elwyn, also someone who was involved very much in local politics as well. I'm sure all of us will pass on our condolences to Agnes on the loss of Elwyn, and certainly from this side we have lost a very fine political opponent. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Buckland. Councillor Abbott, do speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I won't add a huge amount to what Councillor Buckland and Councillor Mann have said. I thought Councillor Mann spoke very well. Having been elected in '99, I've served on the council both through Labour and Conservative administrations, and Elwyn was one of those councillors who, despite their political differences, was always friendly, always personable. And like Councillor Mann, you can only pay tribute to the way in which he soldiered on despite very significant health impacts of what he'd suffered. My main memory of him was I sat with him on a number of committees, including Planning Committee, and sat next to him. And Councillor Mann mentioned about his disposition, how mild it was. I can tell you that when he disagreed with what someone had just said, you would get this rumble from the side, rubbish or nonsense, and a twinkle in his eye. And I'll always remember that. He had a brilliant sense of humour, and he'll be much missed. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Like the other speakers, on behalf of House and Residents Association, we too would like to send our sympathies to Agnes, who also served on this council, and the family. I've known Elwyn all the time he was on the council, and so I go way back with what he did in his career on the council. And as a chairman, he was one of the nicest chairmen that you could work under. He was a gentleman, he was pleasant and polite, and he always had regard for other members on the council. From my group, I'm the only one from the council that remember him, although Councillor Hume did have connections with him through his job in teaching, and he said what a fine man he was and high principled. We're going to miss him, even though he's no longer on the council, because he always seems to have been there in the background. And when Elwyn was chairman, that was before Cabinet took on various roles. So if you were chairman, you did all the jobs. You was the face of the council at everything you did. So it was really hard work. And he served that well with Agnes, because it wasn't something that he did on his own. And he was a real credit to us. But like the others, I can remember that accident as plain as anything. And how he ever came back from that, I don't know. And that just shows the calibre of the man, really, how dedicated and strong that he was to get through that. So we are very sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. And thank you, members. And it is sad, isn't it, when somebody of such calibre is no longer with us. On behalf of the council, I would like to formally express our sincere sympathy to Elwyn's family. Agnes, you've mentioned, and I would add that I have sent a condolence card on the chairman's card to her and the family. So we draw a sad line under that and we move forward. And I'm now going to invite Councillor Butland, as leader of the council, to make any of his announcements. Councillor Butland, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a statement to make tonight which has only arisen in the last couple of hours, so my apologies for not even being able to forewarn many of my cabinet colleagues, but I think it is a statement, given what we are discussing tonight, which members of the council would wish to hear. I'm very pleased, Madam Chairman, to advise that confirmation was received today from the Department of Transport that we have received full funding for both the Central Essex Square and South Braintree Digital Demand Responsive Transport, which I will refer to as DDRT in the rest of this statement. The bid was made jointly with Essex County Council to the Rural Mobility Fund and is worth in excess of £2.5 million. The DDRT scheme will enable users to access transport via an app, enabling real-time arrival updates and enabling staff to access transport through convenient virtual stops. The DDRT scheme will be operated using electric minibuses. The South Braintree scheme supports our priority to connect people and places and our promise to develop our infrastructure, leading to improved journeys in and across the district. The scheme will provide a sustainable and flexible transport option to the currently unserved business parks of Skyline, Horizon 120 and Springwood, enabling the growth of these local employment sites and supporting them to thrive and improve opportunities for residents within the district. In connecting our Great Notley, Black Notley and Rain communities to the business parks, bus and rail stations for greater connectivity and onward travel, and it will also improve opportunities for our residents. It will enable commuters to use traditional public transport for inward travel to Braintree and use the DDRT scheme for the last leg of their journey, avoiding the need for a car and supporting our local economy. It will also support our students to access the sixth form centre, enabling independent travel, and will also support elderly residents to access shopping and medical facilities, thus reducing the walking distance needed and helping us to reduce social isolation. By reducing travel time to our residents using sustainable travel methods, it will take a significant amount of traffic off our roads. The Central Essex Square scheme will enable links with other key transport hubs outside of our district, with the creation of a 24/7 sustainable transport option to the currently unserved business parks of Skyline and Horizon 120. This will enable staff with different shift patterns to use sustainable transport to get to work and enable visitors to access the sites without reliance on a car. This will help the growth of these local employment sites. The community will also be able, through connecting DDRT services, to make public transport journeys via key transport interchanges, such as Chelmer Valley Park and Ryde, and providing easier access to Broomfield Hospital, Writtle College, and Chelmsford City. This will both enable those without transport to independently travel, reducing social isolation and taking cars off the road. We promised, Madam Chairman, as part of our corporate strategy, that we would improve the district's digital connectivity, that we would harness innovation and technology to meet future digital needs. This successful bid will use technology to reduce our residents' journey times, creating the ability to access sustainable transport through their digital devices. Madam Chairman, this really is an exciting development here in Braintree. one which has secured significant funding from central government, as I say, over £2.5 million, and has the opportunity to fundamentally revolutionise what we are doing in this district. And I think will sit alongside much of the debate which I think we will hear tonight. So I'm delighted that that has come through this afternoon, because I think it sets a framework in which our debate can take place tonight. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butland. Very exciting. I'll now proceed to item 6, which is the draft climate change strategy. Now, this item set out on pages 5 to 30 of your agendas. And before inviting Councillor Wendy Schmidt, who's the Cabinet Member for Environment and Place, to introduce the report and to move the recommendations set out on page 5 of the agenda, this evening we are seeking an open debate on this draft strategy. And I'd encourage members to contribute. I'd be grateful if you would all limit yourself to 5 minutes or under, preferably, and there'll be no questions and answers. It's just plain straightforward discussions. So, Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, would you like to start us off? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Before I go on to the draft climate strategy, there are 2 timely pieces of information that I would like to share with Council, as they have relevance to this item. Firstly, tomorrow, Essex County Council Cabinet are discussing their response to the Essex Climate Action Commission on the themes of adapting to an already changing climate, transport, and the built environment. This, of course, will help us with our strategy. The next item will certainly please Councillors Parker, Johnson, and a member of the public who had all contacted me last week for an update on this matter. On Friday afternoon, I was delighted to receive notification that Councillor Bentley, Cabinet Member for Highways at Essex County Council, has agreed to extend the trial for the one cuts on verges for a further year, but this time for the whole of the district. This has been a long, hard journey, but we are finally there. And as I said, this is most timely. So, to the climate strategy. I'm pleased to be able to present you with the draft, and let it be known this is a draft climate change strategy for discussion this evening. This strategy is the culmination of an extraordinary amount of work from the Climate Change Working Group over the last year. It is a subject that the more you look into, the more you discover, and the science and technology are constantly changing, and this all takes time to study. The first thing I would like to do is to thank the group, all of whom were volunteers, for the hard work and the time that they have put into developing the strategy. And of course, our BDC staff, who are also dealing with the pandemic at the same time. It has been a real team effort. Our new draft strategy builds on the previous one and on the work we have undertaken over a number of years, which has given us a strong foundation for our approach to tackling climate change. We recognise, however, that we need to increase the pace of change in order to meet the ambitious targets that we have set both as a council and for the Braintree district. We are all aware that this is a global problem, and only by all working together will we be able to meet these goals, which is why our new strategy is not just one for us as a district council, but for the whole community. There will be actions that we can take directly, either in the way we run our own services or how we set policies. There will also be projects that we need to collectively work on with other public sector partners, businesses, community groups, and residents. But we have not restricted ourselves to things that we can directly control. We recognise the need for us to use our position ourselves as community leader to influence at both a local and a national level to help drive change forward, and this strategy sets out how we aim to achieve this. The development of this strategy has been running in parallel to some other important pieces of work, most notably the Environment Bill as it makes its way through Parliament, and the work of the Essex Climate Commission. We have continued to keep abreast of developments in this work and factor this into the draft strategy where we can. This will continue in the months ahead with the hope that the bill gains royal assent by the end of the year, giving us some certainty as to how government policy can support us in our objectives. Following our discussions on the strategy tonight, there will be a period of initial engagement with our communities to enable us to feed a wide range of views and opinions into the final strategy. The engagement will start in May following PERDA, with the final strategy being brought before Council in July 2021. We have already received feedback on the strategy from the Climate Change Working Group, and this will be considered alongside the feedback we receive from our communities and from the discussion this evening to help shape the final strategy. An initial action plan will also be presented to Council at this time, and members will be aware that at Council in February, we agreed to an initial investment of £500,000 towards the delivery of our climate change objectives. I would like to emphasise, though, that to be successful in delivering this strategy, we will need to continue sustained and proactive engagement with our communities throughout the life of the strategy. It is a living document which will be able to react to changes. Our communities have shown over the last year how well they can respond to the challenges we all face. Our best chance of success is to harness the skills, knowledge and enthusiasm that we have across the district. You will see from the draft strategy that we are covering a number of priorities to support us to achieve carbon neutrality as far as practical for our organisation and for our district, as well as improving our environment. We need to consider how we can reduce resources and energy use, improve biodiversity, planning, transport, and how we run our own services, as well as supporting our communities to adapt to climate change. We also need to think about how we can, as individuals, take greater responsibility in helping to tackle climate change. We must fully embed climate change thinking into everything that we do. This document may seem small for so important a topic. The original was 60 pages long, and that was before actions being added to it. The final strategy will be in layers to enable people who might not want to read the whole strategy to pick a topic and via links go into it in more depth. This strategy is not just about what we want to achieve, but how we will do it. We need to ensure that the conditions for change are also considered, including the skills and funding we need, how we will use data to help identify the actions that will have the biggest impact, while creating opportunities for more collaborative working and encouraging behavioural change that will be required to enable us to meet our objectives. This strategy takes a further and significant positive step in the right direction for this council, its communities and stakeholders in tackling climate change to reduce climate emissions and protect the world and its resources for the existing and future generations to come. I so move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Schmidt. Councillor Schmidt has moved the recommendations set out on page 5 of the agenda. Can I now have a seconder, please?
Formally second, Madam Chairman, reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Buckland. So now, a lot of members have already signed up to speak to us all. And I am going to start off with Councillor Rose, followed by Councillor Abbott. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm speaking on the draft climate change strategy, Chairman. I will be supporting the recommended decisions in item 6 of the draft climate strategy. The initiative shown by this council to become carbon neutral where practical by 2030 and to build resilient communities that can adapt to the impact of climate change. Madam Chairman, climate change is not a flavour of the month initiative, but a process that is affecting the planet. As a responsible local authority, we declare the climate change emergency in July 2020 and announced a target to be carbon neutral as far as practical by 2030. The 6-week stakeholder engagement to enable the delivery of a climate change strategy by the council is to be applauded. We must take every action possible to prevent global changes to the climate before it's too late. The changes and the evidence is there. You only have to look at the rises in temperature, rises in the level of the seas, and changes in global weather patterns. The causes of these changes are many, but we should all be looking at how we could do our bit. Engagement with central government to look at electric powered vehicles or hydrogen powered vehicles to cut down on fossil fuel emissions. Indeed, Rolls-Royce recently announced their decision to develop an electric aero engine, which shows just how much importance is being given to our climate. On a local level, our role is to act as a community leader to tackle climate change in a way we can deliver our services and working in partnership with local organisations, partners and community to minimise environmental impact. The initiative by this council to enter into consultation whereby we can promote the 3 E's to educate, engage and encourage our residents to look at recycling, packaging waste, indeed a whole raft of issues that will ultimately benefit the community. My great-grandchildren will inherit and grow up in a world that we pass on to them. The climate change strategy outlined by the authority is recognition that we are serious about our environment and quality of life. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. I had Councillor Abbott and then it'll be Councillor Van Dulken.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a subject dear to my heart. I've been interested in climate since the 1970s. I studied atmospheric physics as part of my degree at university, and it was there in 1981 and 82 that really the whole issue of climate change solidified for me, because it's really all about science. And the science is that the concentration of carbon dioxide as the main greenhouse gas that we're changing is rising remorselessly year on year, and that every single means of measuring temperature globally, whether that's the oceans, the atmosphere, or combined from the surface or from satellite, shows that the climate system is warming up. And if we don't do anything about it, it will continue to warm up with the well-known implications that will follow. Before I get into the detail of the strategy, though, and I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but I just put this out there, perhaps Councillor Butland could address it. It's not clear to me what the result of our deliberations is tonight. Will the comments we're making be actually captured tonight, or will the draft strategies go out to consultation unamended? Because if the latter is the case, then I wonder what we're actually trying to achieve, because there are a number of areas where the document, a good a start as it is, could be improved. And similarly, I wonder what the governance arrangements will be when it comes back to council in July in terms of whether the strategies are amendable. In terms of the strategy itself, it's welcome as far as it goes, and I certainly welcome the leader's announcement on sustainable transport funding, and particularly the cabinet member's announcement on verges. It's wonderful news if we're not going to see the wildflowers cut down as they are every single spring and early summer. We all want Braintree District to be leading on this vital issue, but the draft climate change strategy as it stands does not address some of the really big real-world issues in this district. And as one of the public speakers said, one of those is the elephant in the room in terms of climate, which is the Rivenhall Airfield Waste Incinerator. If built, it would be the single largest source of carbon dioxide in Essex. It's a very daunting prospect. The G&I group tabled a number of motions for debate since the elections last time around in May 2019, and we hope we've helped to raise the profile of the climate and species crisis. And we genuinely welcome the all-party support where that's been possible to achieve. But we would say now is the time to be more ambitious. Curiously, the draft strategy does not make commitments to expand on obvious climate mitigation measures such as the emissions of the incinerator, but more strangely, there's no specific mention for renewable energy on new developments, or indeed the substantial increase in tree planting that this council has already signed up to by an approved motion at full council. Turning to some of the detail on the pages, on page 3, there is no mention of the impacts of climate change on habitats and species, which seems an omission, because a continuing warming is likely to mean that some native plants and animals may not be able to adapt. The strategy says that limiting temperatures to no more of a rise of 1.5 degrees is the agreed global target. Yes, that's correct, but there's no baseline given against which that is set. And this is really coming, what I'm about to say now comes down to the crux of why I asked, is this going to be changed as a result of what we say tonight? Because the graph and information on page 5 appears to be very confusing. For example, the transport total emissions as shown on the graph haven't actually fallen, but there's no actual scale units on the graph where you know exactly what emissions you're talking about. The pie chart lists various reductions needed, but the quoted numbers, are they per year or up to the year 2030? I think both the graph and the pie chart on page 5 are referring to kilotons of carbon dioxide per annum, but it's not clear. I think the other area of confusion is that, and we welcome this, that there's a net zero target for this council by 2030, but of course that's not a whole district target. And I think the data in the statements in the strategy tend to confuse those two things. It rightly says on page 18 that good data and measuring progress is vital. So indeed, the strategy needs to be very clear on baselines and definitions. I think the most glaring area, which I really would urge is corrected before this goes to public consultation, is the graph on page 5, where neither the timeline on the x-axis is linear, nor the emissions on the y-axis, and the y-axis isn't labelled. Well, so someone reading that graph is going to really struggle to understand exactly what it's about. And again, in terms of the confusion between what BDC does and in the wider district, on page 6 it mentions measures which have been assisted by BDC, but I think were actually installed on private properties, such as the energy switch. On page 10, and I know this is a hobby horse I come back to, but I'll raise it again. Under energy conservation, there's no mention of light pollution, which is an obvious area of concern in that, in effect, light pollution is energy wasted to the sky, as well as being harmful to nocturnal species and a potential nuisance to residents. The recent BDC Contact magazine says on page 9, in the section on the environment, that the #1 way to help climate and the environment is to turn off the lights. That's a quote. When not in use, obviously to save energy, but presumably that applies outdoors as much as it does indoors. And whilst obviously we do need some lights on it all night long, surely non-functional lights burning energy and emitting light into the environment at night in the small hours makes no sense. On page 12, it is stated that the number of vehicles on the roads needs to reduce, and the announcement by Councillor Butland just now is very welcome in that regard. But it does beg the question as to why the District Council and the County Council are so set on promoting the entirely offline new A120 through open countryside, which is predicted to increase traffic along its route corridor by 50%.
Hello,
Clearly,
Councillor Abbott. I am using my discretion and I'm giving you 1 more minute, okay?
That's spot on, Madam Chairman. I've timed it. Clearly, the A120 does need work to make it safer, but it's being promoted as a growth corridor. On page 12, and to be consistent with the draft cycling strategy, we need to be saying that the cycling network, as proposed by GNI, will link into both the villages and the railway stations. And if there's one thing we could do, which would be a real game changer in the district, it would be a comprehensive cycling and walking network. Finally, Madam Chairman, the most recent Friends of the Earth September 29 survey of how Braintree is doing compared to other councils puts us of the league table of tackling climate change around the middle of the table. Let's be more ambitious and aim for the top. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Van Dul, can I have next?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And I certainly welcome the commitment in writing now by the Council to tackle climate change within its parameters and to set an example for the region. I'm particularly interested in the very timely and relevant investment of this council in the innovative iConstruct facility in Springfield Industrial Estate, as mentioned on page 11 of the climate change strategy, which will promote a variety of eco-friendly techniques and practices in the construction industry locally and further afield, and do much, I'm sure, to further the aims of the policy. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Euston. Unmute.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Very
Sorry
good.
about that. I'll be brief. I think I will support the climate change document. I think it's an excellent start. We must recognise that we can't do everything all at once, and we can't do it on our own. So collective effort from other authorities, from governments, other countries is essential. And it's a lot more than switching us all into electric cars. So there is a whole range of activities that need to be done that we can't do on our own, such as stopping companies producing goods with built-in obsolescence, so that we have to buy a new one every 5 years because you can't fix them. Well, that was never the case before. I'm old enough to remember when you could buy a fridge for life, and we should actually insist that companies return to that ethos. And the other thing that I'll briefly mention is there's a lot of emphasis in the media and by our government, and of course locally, on electric cars. My concern is the batteries for electric cars currently require lithium to make them. And my understanding, and I'm not a scientist, but it's just something that I read recently, is that the lithium that is required for production of car batteries is only available from one source and is in a limited supply, and car manufacturers are bidding against each other to buy the supplies that there are. It would seem to me to be prudent not to put all our eggs into the electric car basket, but to look at other sources that we could develop nationally, and we could play a part in that too, such as hydrogen, where the only byproduct I understand is water, which is another thing that we may be short of in the future. So it makes a good idea to make some more. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Hensman, followed by Councillor Ball. Councillor Hensman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I find myself agreeing with Councillor Abbott, where he is just high ambitions. I asked, why just carbon neutral? Before I continue, I need to make a declaration that I'm a trustee of the Archer Community Trust here in Braintree, and I'm proud to say that this has one of the greenest buildings in Essex, already being carbon negative. So
thank you.
There's the graphic behind me there that I often bring out. And it was carbon negative when it opened, and has undergone further greener initiatives, with upgrades having taken place during lockdown. So if anything good has come out of lockdown, this is it. Although this takes a lot of work to convert a building that has already established, it is possible, as we have proved, and the savings in terms of sustainable power, rainwater harvesting, and the climate are immense. One issue I foresee, however, is NIMBYism. Like mobile phones, you can't use them without the unwanted maths. In the same way, solar and wind generation requires infrastructure to fulfill the ambition to move away from fossil fuels. The love affair with the car is also one that will be hard to break. This is nothing new. Some will remember the unpopular fuel price escalator in the early 1990s, now almost 30 years ago. This was designed to cut pollution, but proved that people would sacrifice anything to keep their cars. My trust is also working with Essex County Council and Community Energy South to set up something like Braintree Community Energy, which will assist local residents and businesses to follow its example, as well as educate and encourage adoption of various schemes, from alternative energy to electric vehicles. I therefore hope that everyone will embrace whatever can be done to curtail global warming. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bohr, followed by Councillor Schwer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'd like to very much welcome this initiative. I think it's brilliant. I'd like to offer congratulations to the working group on the draft strategy document. It will, of course, change over time. It's not set in stone. And as mentioned in the script, the action plan will be reviewed annually. I'd like to pick out a couple of priorities. One on page 11, which is 21 overall in the report, under planning and development. I very much welcome the aim to reduce carbon impact and improve biodiversity in building sites. There's a very damning statistic which I discovered today, in that for the built environment as a whole, in its construction, use and maintenance, that accounts for 45% of the total CO2 emissions. That's incredible. We're obviously making some improvements. We have ambitions in that on that score with the iConstruct and coming up with new building materials. And also the second one that really encourages me is on page 14, which is 24 overall of the report, under natural environment. The planting of, it mentions the planting of trees and soil carbon enhancement. That is a very basic method by which we can soak up the CO2 that we produce. So, you know, those two, reducing the CO2 and soaking up that's produced. And I very much support this, will be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chair, I'd just like to refer to the planning and development, and building on the comments from Councillor Bohr and Van Dalkin, really. A lot of people are under the impression that climate change can often involve a lot of expense. But I'd just like to comment on the simple facts of building. When we build new houses and with developers, and this is going to be a very important point, I think, in going forward with planning and communications and new communities, is actually the orientation of a building, especially a house, needs to be south or southeast or southwest at the limit in order to encourage renewable solar or thermal energy production from the house, normally on the roof. And the other thing is we need to ensure that with developers that they put the right pitch on the roof, because that will make an enormous difference to the efficiency and productivity of either solar or thermal energy on a roof. And this will give the occupants the option of getting into renewables in a much bigger way and becoming more self-sufficient, which I think is good. And of course, all of this will save on the CO production from a house. And I think, as has been mentioned earlier, we are very fortunate to have iConstruct at this time. We are going to be having an increase in industrial experts working with new technology and techniques. But some of that technology will be interesting. But I think importantly, I would like to see a move to more a mass production of timber frame buildings, which are more sustainable. Because should these go wrong, they can be torn down and effectively reused. And of course, the advantage of timber is that this can come from, obviously, from wood, and it would nice to have trees and forests that are grown in order to sustain our building program going forward in the future. And I think that's an important element. But I do welcome iConstruct, and I think we're going to be very fortunate to have that technology coming forward. And also, a lot of people think we need to use energy, because basically it's about energy transference. So some people have talked about with the iConstruct and technology, and it is possible to build a house without any heating whatsoever. What we need to consider is redesigning our development and homes as well, pushing bedrooms and utility rooms to the north, larger windows to the south, so that we get solar gain during the day, which will keep the heat, and we can use materials that can release energy into the home at night. And also that will make an enormous difference. And mechanical ventilation can stop energy being exhausted from a house and keep it in, and it's exchanged before with fresh air to keep it healthy. So there are lots of techniques that are currently available, and I would like and hope, and I'm sure that these will be adopted by government. And I think it's very important that we communicate with the building industry and with government to adopt lots of these going forward, because it would be very interesting. But overall, I would like to, I welcome this draft strategy and a lot of it, and I think it's going to be of great interest to all of the public and our businesses across the district and beyond. And I'm certain we will get a lot of great feedback from it. And I welcome the evolution of this document as a working document. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call Councillor Walsh and then Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I've only got one point to make, but I'd like to preface it with a couple of positive comments. I'm very pleased that several councillor colleagues, including from the majority group, have already made the point about in climate we need to work with community groups in our communities. And I also recognise that this draft strategy is a good starting point. My main comment is about page 15 of the report about flooding. The reference there is very bland, and it doesn't really give us any indication at all of a preferred policy direction. And if I could just chuck something in for colleagues to think about, I would suggest we should give thought to using sensible community-led and benign and natural flood control mechanisms to ameliorate flooding, allowing water to overflow into river plain and meadow areas, rather than being committed to very large scale and carbon-inducing schemes, such as the one proposed by the Environment Agency, somewhat surprisingly for Coggeshall, which would include a quarry and a dam and a 20-year project, no less. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard then.
Thank you, Chair. Despite the pressures that we have seen our country put under by the COVID pandemic, I think it's particularly financial, of course. I think it's incredible to look at what we've done both nationally and locally in Conservative-led administrations to focus on the environmental issues that we currently face and are going to be facing for some years to come. Nationally, at the recent budget, despite those pressures, the Conservative administration were able to announce £15 billion earmarked for environmental issues, including a green bond scheme, which seemed a rather innovative approach. Locally, we have Essex County Council, who have committed £1 million towards environmental initiatives in this budget. And of course, in our own council, we have been able to commit £500,000, which I'm delighted to see. We have to acknowledge those financial pressures by also looking at the increases that we're seeing across the country in taxation. The average increase across the UK is 4.3% in local taxation. In the East, it's 3.5%. And as we know, both county and district here, it's 0%. Our focus in BDC, of course, needs to remain upon the delivery of services to our residents. And it's only through delivery of those services, in conjunction with these environmental initiatives, that we will be able to take the public with us. If we don't have public engagement, then we will fail, both locally and nationally, and probably globally. And that's what I think BDC is doing through the delivery of this draft strategy. We are leading by delivering a strategy document of this nature. It is a draft, it will require work, and I accept already some of the good comments that have been made by members on this matter. So I will be supporting this fully, and I look forward to seeing how this develops, both in my time and beyond as a councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have Councillor Unsworth, followed by Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, I'm on the Climate Change Working Group, and some of what I speak about now will be has been covered in the meeting. One thing does concern me, in fact, that this agenda item, the Council is being asked to agree to go to consultation with the draft strategy. As we've already mentioned, the document attached does not reflect the latest changes agreed at the working group, and the one that seems to be going out to consultation with the agenda goes out without these changes. So There are specific changes that went through, particularly on page 9, with regard to minimising the CO2 as a result of disposal of waste, and with it being at the bottom of the hierarchy, have not been included. I would like some assurances that these changes made and agreed at the last climate group, along with those today, form an amended document from tonight that goes out for consultation and not the one that's attached to these papers. It's unclear as to how that will actually happen. Onto the document itself now, page 6 of the strategy, there are some figures with regard to CO2 reduction. I think these need clarifying. Are they for a year? Are they for a 10-year period? What happened to the balance between the amount recycled and the total collections? Some couple of 100,000 there. As we've heard today, the incinerator will be built in the lifetime of this strategy and double these figures. It was also confirmed at the latest site liaison meeting with the developer that only the incinerator will be built. So it is a disintegrated waste management facility with only a big burner on it. What mitigation measures are in place? Whereas the G&I proposal for woodlands, which was voted down, would have been a proactive start. We've already heard various councillors talking as to how good trees would have been. This would have provided 30 acres of woodland with over 19,000 trees. The agenda paper this evening states that the environmental bill has delayed it, but it did not stop Essex County from progressing their woodland forest initiative. Please, can we be more ambitious with regard to new woodlands that will soak up CO2, as the majority of people have said tonight, and be great for people and wildlife. In terms of the funding section on page 17 or 27, can we agree that to add that BDC will develop a funding strategy similar to the set aside but for wildlife and woodland orientated, that helps local landowners in our district who want to set aside land for flood alleviation and community woodlands and wildlife havens? It needs to be specifically aimed at those landowners who are prepared to create these sanctuaries. We all know that they're good for wildlife and for our own mental health. This needs to be an initiative delivered and managed by this council, independent of national schemes. Perhaps we could use some of the new homes bonus for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I had Councillor Wright. Unmute, please.
I had done, but it went back.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. I do support this strategy, but I'm concerned that it's either taken 1 or 2 years to produce, because on page 5 of the agenda, it states we started declaring a climate emergency in July 2019. And actually in the document, it then states that we declared a climate emergency in July 2020. It's taken 2 years to produce this report. We only have 9 more years to reach a carbon neutral position. Do you think we should start to take some action now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take Councillor Beavis next, followed by Councillor Thorogood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You caught me unawares as to the page I was going to refer to. So,
do you want to come after Councillor Thorogood then, while you find it? You're muted.
It's fine.
No, wait a minute. Councillor Beavis, do you want to continue or do you want to go after Councillor Thorogood?
I found the page. Thank you.
Okay, very good. You go then. Thank you.
Thank you. It refers to page 15 of the strategy and the second bullet, improve flood alleviation for community areas that flood. And the point I wanted to make, Madam Chairman, was specifically on the River Colne. Our climate is changing, hotter summers and wetter winters. As a result, we are experiencing an increase in flooding. The River Colne is at the heart of the communities that I represent. The multi-million-pound dam at Howstead protects the town of Howstead. Yet up and down the river in our rural communities, the river floods and causes disruption to the land and to the road. Local volunteers and community groups work hard to reduce flooding by removing trees and obstructions in the river. And many trees have fallen and they've never been replaced. I think it would be helpful if the council could consider in its budget process reinstating a budget for the conservation of the River Colne that would support the work of these communities and the volunteers that work so hard. And in addition, it would dovetail into the work of the Environment Agency. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorogood.
Thank you. Just a few points. Just on page 11 of the report, on the section on planning and development, there's no commitment to installing renewable energy such as solar panels in new developments, whereas I believe this is written into the new developments of the section 2 of the local plan. So I think it should just be joined up. On page 18, it is stated, given the urgency of the climate change challenge, energy should be incorporated into all new developments as soon as possible, because at the moment that's not being done. And we've got some new developments in Fearing and Kelvedon which don't include these. Just going back to page 12, the grids, the electric charging forecourt is mentioned. At the last full council meeting, one of the majority group criticised me for not voting in favour of it, and the Horizon 120, I can't remember who it was now, but the reason why I voted against it is because it was built on a greenfield site, and hedges were ripped out. Now hedges, they've been shown that they can trap toxins at exhaust pipe level. 1 metre of hedge can sequester the carbon emissions of a car's 500-mile journey in a week. So, you know, you've got an electric charging forecourt, but loads of, meters and meters of hedges were ripped out. In fact, 40 metres of hedgerow have been shown to contain up to 2,000 different species of fauna and flora. So now my concern at the time was why, there were derelict sites at like Pods Brook on the corner of Rain Road near the Springwood Industrial Site, which would have been, I don't know the availability of it, but it would have been a much better site in my view and a good use of a derelict site. And just in general terms, I agree with Michael Staines and the incinerator. That it really does need to be addressed, because although I agree with the sentiment, it's while that incinerator is going ahead, we're really just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. So I really would like to push for a government review or a county council review of that 2009 decision, because the planning permission that was given in 2009 is so far removed from what is being pushed forward now. So
thank you, Councillor Thorogood. Thank you. I'm going to take Councillor Sandham, followed by Councillor Courtauld.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I too think it's great and welcome the draft strategy and all the constructive suggestions that have been made this evening. Just a couple of points from me. On page 11 on planning and development, it says the Environment Bill is likely to require new developments to deliver a biodiversity gain of 110%. Should that be 10% over the baseline? Yeah, just checking on that. 110% would be wonderful, but I don't know that that's achieved what they meant. And I also just wanted to suggest an addition to this section. Currently, there's no commitment to retain as much biodiversity and habitat as possible on development sites, in particular ponds, trees and hedges. And recent losses on many sites in our district have been worrying and often avoidable, but BDC as a planning authority does not seem willing to act. So it'd be a very positive commitment if a commitment to address this issue could be included in this section. Thank you.
Chairman, your apologies, your microphone switched off. Thank you. Please, Chairman.
Apologies, my microphone got switched off. Councillor Courtauld.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and congratulations to everyone involved in producing this draft, which of course I welcome, and I can't believe there's anyone on this council who doesn't believe in a benign planet and a benign climate. I have a hope I would like to voice and a niggle, and I'll start with the niggle on page 9. The first sentence says, we must reduce our impact on the world's natural resources with a focus on fair and sustainable consumption. And I just wonder what fair means and who decides that and polices it. My hope is has already been mentioned, this has already been mentioned on page 12, where it says that we would like to reduce the use of private cars and reduce the number of vehicles on the roads, even if improving technology makes them eco-friendly, I wonder. Because I'm sure we're all for expanding choice by making it easier for our constituents to take a bike or a bus, but surely not by attacking their freedom and their autonomy and their choices as car-using individual consumers. And I very much do believe that cars are going to become more and more eco-friendly. And I also believe that they, particularly in a rural ward like mine, are absolutely essential to local life. But I do welcome this draft and congratulate everyone involved.
Thank you very much. I'm minded to have Councillor Everard and followed by Councillor Weeks. Councillor Everard, are you unmuted? Yes, you are. Lovely.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to emphasise that landfill is still a very huge problem, and we need to find a solution for that. I know technology has moved on a lot, and I know incinerators have been mentioned, but so really we've got to find a solution to stop all this landfill. I was going to say that it's good to see that our council will set an example to all in its own operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It was lovely to hear the positive news regarding the 1 annual cut of verges. Will this now be put in the climate change strategy? And tree planting. There was an agreed council policy recently, namely a substantial increase in the tree planting, such as community woodlands. Essex County Council has its ambitious Essex Forest Initiative. I hope Braintree District could follow suit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Spray, and followed by Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just thought it's worth mentioning, because a number of speakers have spoken about energy efficiency on new developments. I just wanted to point out that the policies within the local plan were agreed in 2016 and 17. So as such, they very likely don't have the most up-to-date information in them regarding climate change, although of course we do have policies on requirements for renewable energy and protection of trees and so on. But one of the actions coming from the Climate Change Action Plan will be to put together a supplementary planning document that will cover exactly the topics that have been raised tonight, and that will provide guidance and support in this area. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to talk a little bit about tree planting, first of all. By the way, I do support this strategy in its inception, and I'm sure it will develop and become a very worthwhile document. And certainly it's a way of guiding the activities and the developments and the way we develop as a council and to become a greener council. And I think we're not trying to boil the ocean here and change the whole national strategy for climate change. I think we're trying to change how we behave in our district. And I want to pick up really what Councillor Thorogood and Councillor Unsworth were talking about, tree planting. First of all, on Horizon 120, there is a strategy, not part of the climate change budget, but part of the strategic investment budget. We're planting 250 trees. And if I use the same mathematics that's been used by the earlier speaker, that will be 1,500 kilograms per year of carbon sequestration. And that's because we own the land. Therefore, we can make decisions to invest our own money in doing just that. And when it comes to the Horizon 120 itself, the whole development is using renewable energy as a guiding principle of the way the whole site will be developed. For instance, gas supply is being very limited, so that only, not the majority of the sites will be gas supplied, because that's not very green. And in fact, only if there was a heavy industry that required gas would it be supplied to them. So the way that we as a district council working with our partner Marshgate is to develop that site with solar panels both on roofs and on the sides of buildings, building them in such a way that they're very, very economical to run, putting charging points in the car parks and using the energy that's provided by the solar batteries that are on the site from our charging points that I think you took great exception to. So I do think that we're already actions that have not yet come out of our strategy are being acted. So people talk about smart, the A bit of smart, we're actually already doing because we're living and breathing the climate strategy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tom Cunningham.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Can I first begin by echoing my appreciation and delight at the announcement of the leader regarding the successful bid, the opportunity in a sustainable way to bring people to new, exciting, innovative workplaces in the future in a sustainable way is tremendously exciting. And I hope it allays, although I perhaps doubt, some of the concerns expressed by Mr. Staines in public question time, who has been somewhat critical of Horizon 120, not only this evening, but in other forums. Views also echoed by Councillor Thorogood, who indeed did vote against £7 million worth, a business case that unlocked £7 million worth of government investment in an enterprise centre in the district of Braintree. It does seem, Madam Chairman, that for some members of the Green and Independent Federation, their journey to an alternative, coherent, holistic economic prospectus for the district of Braintree does have some way to travel. But I'd like to just make a couple of points regarding the green economy and perhaps make a plea for a little more detail on that in this strategy and a little bit more evidenced by the green economy. For many residents at the moment in time, as thankfully fears of the medical emergency of the pandemic subside, their primary concern is job creation, job security and job opportunities for future generations. We have a wonderful opportunity in the district of Braintree because of our geographical location, close proximity to the coast and the opportunities of the renewable energy sector. We also have very fine further and higher education facilities who can really lock in to this green agenda, not only from education and an awareness perspective, but helping bring forward the skills that will develop those new products, goods and services in the sector. We've spoken a lot about iConstruct already, great opportunities to do more in this area. We will talk about these things, Madam Chairman, job creation in other discussions, but I would just like to say there is that opportunity to embed this further into what is already a very fine document. And as a result, I think we will have better actions to take forward at the end of a consultation and engagement process and be able to really deliver for the district of Braintree. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. I have a point of order from Councillor Hicks. Would you like to say what it is you want to say? Councillor Hicks?
Yes, hello, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I thought right at the beginning of this meeting, Madam Chairman, that this was a discussion to talk about the way forward, not to respond to individual councillors and what's been raised through this discussion. So that's my point of order. The last two councillors have pointedly responded to what's been said. And I didn't think that was what this meeting was about.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Councillor Hicks, we're all listening to everybody's excellent points on this draft strategy. And I've had a lovely evening listening. I've had a very wide variety of points, and I'm going to carry on. But I take your point of order, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I now have Councillor Wrench. Thank you.
Point of information, Madam Chairman.
Can I take Councillor Wrench first and then Councillor Abbott? Would you mind?
Well, it relates to the previous speaker.
Oh, does it? All right. Well, then we'll go to Councillor Abbott then.
So it's just briefly, Madam Chairman, I'm not aware of anything called the Green and Independent Federation. We are the Green and Independent Group.
Right.
Councillor Cunningham called us a federation. Thank you.
So, okay. Thank you very much for the point. Now I'm going to Councillor Wrench, who's been very patient.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. I'd just like to pick up on a point raised by the Cabinet member, Councillor Wendy Smith, at the beginning of the debate tonight. I think it's absolutely fantastic to see that the trial for verge cutting, which I know she worked so hard on to get trialled across our district, is now going to be trialled across Essex itself. And I think that just points out the ambition that this council holds and the way that now this is setting a standard across the whole of the county. I know GridServe has been mentioned tonight. I feel that we should be extremely proud of having GridServe within our community and a first for our country. So I feel that that is going to be absolutely vital for the sustainability of the car manufacturers as we move forward and ensuring that our community are able to have that charging points. And finally, I know we've mentioned or heard a lot about iConstruct, but also Horizon 120, despite hedgerows maybe being taken down, the net biodiversity gain is quite incredible. And just to point out specifically to the area on the northeast of the site, will be designated habitat with ponds, grasslands, natural hedgerows and trees enhancing the biodiversity. So it will attract animals such as birds, mammals, insects and reptiles to the site. And again, for an area within our district that is aimed to promote employment and growth, it also is there for the biodiversity with many green credentials. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, apparently I've been naughty and cut off Councillor Tom Cunningham. I didn't realise you hadn't finished. I'm so sorry. You carry on again.
Madam Chairman, I assure you I have finished. I'm sure that was very welcome for everyone that I had. But
well, I got little notes. So thank you very much for being upfront with me then. And so we'll now go to Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to make the point that whilst we're looking at a new developing strategy here, an awful lot of the initiatives have already been embedded into the work that we're all doing. And I'm just wanting to mention specifically the Halstead Leisure Centre, the replacement of the all-weather pitch there. I did circulate all members, so it's not a secret, but we're reusing and recycling the old carpet that's coming in on golf courses and in schools. And we have arranged the lighting there specifically to shine onto the pitch and not light the heavens up that Councillor Abbott seems to imply that the lighting gets done. And of course, it's provided leisure facilities for all age groups and sexes up there. So it's an initiative that embeds an awful lot of the initiatives that we've got here that are already in place and being thought out and developed.
Have you done? Thank you very much. I don't want to cut anybody off, but we have come to the end of my list, and Councillor Buckland, who was the seconder, hasn't yet spoken. Would you like to speak now, Councillor Buckland?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes. If I could just say a few words, which in a way will pick up the point that Councillor Abbott raised at the beginning of this debate in terms of where we go from here. In the old days, of course, what would have happened would be the majority group would have produced a strategy. It would have brought it to council. It would have pushed it through on its votes, and that would have been it. That's the strategy. This isn't about that. This is actually quite different. And I think there's a reason why it has to be quite different. Because we actually have to change the way in which individuals look at things and are prepared to live their lives. And merely coming up with a document and saying, well, that's done and dusted, that's the strategy now, would be, I think, totally meaningless. But I also think there has, so in terms of what is happening tonight, clearly we will be capturing the views of members, but we are just 49 people out of 168,000 in the district. And I include people of all ages, from 0 to our oldest resident. And what we need to do is to get this debate going with those people. And I have no doubt that within Braintree, there will be those at one end of the seesaw, the climate change deniers, and there will be others at the other end of the seesaw who will be the zealots, who will say every decision must be taken purely on a climate change issue. Actually, we've got to get somewhere in between those two. It's no good, in my view, trying to say to families who are living in extremely cramped conditions, who may at this moment no longer have a job, that actually it's all about climate change. And you know that car out there which you use once a week to go to get your shopping or even to a food bank, you're not going to be able to use that. We have got a lot to do in getting this debate and discussion going. And I've been delighted tonight that by and large, I think most contributors, whichever side of the chamber they have come from, have adopted that view that this is something which will take time to do. Now, there clearly have been some issues. Councillor Abbott raised about lighting. I've still got some of the scars when we refused as a district to pay the county council to keep the street lights on, because a lot of people did not want those street lights taken off. And I think we have to accept that there may be things which we may feel strongly about as individuals or individual groups, which may not necessarily at this moment be supported in the wider community. Councillor Courtauld made I think a very valid remark around the use of cars. At this moment, I suspect, and I don't have sort of empiric evidence for it, but a lot of people will feel more comfortable and safer traveling in their car than they will on public transport. And that's as a direct result of what we have gone through in the pandemic of the last 12 months. And how long that will remain, I think, is a moot point. So we cannot look, in my view, at climate change in a vacuum. It has to be looked at as part of the whole approach. And that is one of the differences, I suppose, between being an administration and being in opposition. In administration, one cannot be a one-trick pony. One has to look at the impacts that take place all the time. It's no good saying, well, it would have been nice to have had that employment land up the road. I don't know who owns it, but it would have been nice to have been up there, which is what I think Councillor Thorogood said. The difference was we own the land. And of course, it was always scheduled for employment land. That is, of course, the other thing that should be remembered. But I think we've made a good start. I don't underestimate that this is part of a journey where we are going to have to take, or attempt to take, a significant proportion of the population with us. I'm merely saying you should come with us because we know better, which is usually our approach. I say our collective approach of administrations over the years. We know better, so you just come with us. Isn't going to work, because it's going to require everyone to change the way in which they look at life and the way in which they're prepared to do things.
Thank you.
But I think, Madam Chairman, I would just finally like to thank, because this was something new as well, in developing a strategy with a group of volunteers and people on that group who actually have been doing things, not just talking about them. And I would like to pay my thanks to those. I am naturally disappointed that some of the comments made by a member of this council to denigrate those members on social media. I don't think that was very clever. And I would say, Madam Chairman, I think when people address these meetings, they should have the courtesy to put their camera on when they're speaking. I think it's just a courtesy that we can see people when they're speaking.
Thank you, Councillor Buckland. I'm giving you a few seconds,
yes,
Councillor Buckland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've made a good start. We will come back after we've had the discussion with stakeholders, etc., in June, July, and then hopefully we can get a strategy which is unanimously supported by members of the council. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Just give me 1 second, will you? I've got a point of order, which is a pity. It is. Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to point out to Councillor Buckland that I would have put my camera on, but as the supporting officers say, if you're having trouble with your internet connection, turn it off. And that's why I did it. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
Point of information, Madam Chairman.
Go on then, Councillor Abbott.
Well, with due respect to Councillor Buckland, whilst he referenced what I said, he's not actually dealt with the point. And so the point of information is if the draft strategy tonight doesn't pick up, and I do take his point about public consultation and I do totally take that point. But if the consultation, if what we've said tonight is not picked up on, then this document goes out with some factual inaccuracies, but also graphs and tables which are clearly not as they should be presented in a clear way. Aside from all the other things we'd like to see in it. So is he saying that there's going to be absolutely no changes as a result of tonight, what goes to public consultation, or will some of those things be picked up? Thank you.
Councillor Buckland's nodding his head.
Madam Chairman, Councillor Schmidt will pick that up in her summing up. But I think it will be comforting to Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, you've been wonderful with all of this. And I would like to say, members, how much I've enjoyed what you've all been saying. Every contribution has been different. I've been really, really thrilled to sit here and listen to you all. And now we're going to have Councillor Schmidt to sum up for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, on the point that Councillor Abbott's raised, where we have what appear to be factual errors or matters that are unclear, we will get those corrected before the draft document goes out. But I will again reiterate, because Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Unsworth raised it, that this is what it is, a draft document, and it was agreed at the meeting that Councillor Unsworth attended that the comments of the working group will go into this document when we have done the consultation. The views of that group, of this council, are no more or no less important than the group, the views of our residents. And so he was aware of that. He was party to that discussion. First of all, I would like to respond to the statements made by Mr. Staines and Mr. Riches during the public question session. First of all, I'm grateful for their interest and comments on the draft climate strategy. And while I would usually provide a response to statements subject to Council's decisions this evening, the Council will be proceeding to a 6-week stakeholder engagement on the draft climate strategy, which will allow all members of the public and other stakeholders to comment on. I consider that it is appropriate that the statements made this evening by Mr. Staines and Mr. Riches are taken forward as part of the engagement process and will be considered alongside the other stakeholder feedback received during the 6-week engagement. It would be lovely to respond to everything this evening, but of course it's not possible and not necessary. Firstly, I better just correct Councillor Wrench's slip of the tongue when he referred to his delight about the Verge trial being Essex-wide. I wish. We start small here. It was a small trial area. It will now be the district. Hopefully it will then be the Essex and the rest of the world. Let's try for big, but just to correct that. But one of the matters that has been raised frequently is tree planting, and also about schools was mentioned. For the last 17 years, we have been planting trees, and wherever possible, we have used schools for several reasons. The most important being these trees represent the future of these young people. And so it is something we have been doing for years. And purely by chance, last week, St Michael's Primary School in Braintree, I was able to help them with a grant from Essex County Council. And they sent me a photograph of the works that was done. And I took the bold step of saying, it would be really, really nice if now you could perhaps plant some wildflower seeds and plants. To get an immediate response back from the head, you must be looking through my window because I've got some on my desk now. And because of that, I've been invited to go along to the school whenever it's possible to do so, to help them with their wildflower planting schemes. And even Councillor Wrench, headmaster of Great Bradford School, I was invited last autumn to tree planting there. So this is going on. We've always worked with schools and we will continue to work with schools because it is the future of our young people. Other councillors mentioned about what a wasteful society we are, basically, and about recycling. The government is just looking now at doing something about the fact that white goods are just, well, they just wear out too quickly. So that is very good. But the important thing is for us to encourage manufacturers to make the transition from materials that cannot be recycled to ones that can. It's something that I say, you know, my mantra, that for every positive, there may be a negative. We have to look so carefully. Things change all of the time. We know petrol versus diesel. Now they're saying that hybrid cars are not good. So everything's on the move and changing all the time. So it's really important that we keep on top of this. And as I said, our views are no more or no less important than the members of our residents. And so, Madam Chairman, rather than continue talking because we've now got the cycling strategy to do, I would recommend decisions 1 and 2 as written, to agree that the Council will carry out a 6-week stakeholder engagement on the draft climate change strategy, and 2, to approve the Council's engagement approach and timescales as set out in section 3 of this report. And as I previously said, we'll correct any inaccuracies in the draft strategy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Schmidt. Thank you very much. So we're now going to move to the vote. The recommendation is set out on page 5 of your agendas, and it's been moved and seconded. We'll be conducting the votes by way of a roll call. And I'm now going to hand over to the Chief Executive, Andy Wright. Hopefully, Andy, you're there.
Good evening, Chairman, and good evening, members. Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Okay, in the usual way, I'll call out each councillor's name, and if you could let me know whether you're for, against, or abstain. Councillor Abbott?
For.
Councillor Ball?
For.
Councillor Beavis?
For.
Councillor Bowers?
For.
Councillor Butland?
For.
Councillor Coleridge?
For.
Councillor Courtauld?
For.
Councillor Mrs Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Dervish?
For.
Councillor Eusden?
For.
Councillor Everard?
For.
Councillor Garrod?
For.
Councillor Hensman?
For.
Councillor Hicks?
Against.
Councillor Horner?
For.
Councillor Hume?
For.
Councillor Johnson?
For.
Councillor Kilmartin?
For.
Councillor Mann?
For.
Councillor McKee?
For.
Councillor Monday?
For.
Councillor Parker?
For.
Councillor Pell?
For.
Councillor Pritchard?
For.
Councillor Radley?
For.
Councillor Raymond?
For.
Councillor Ritchie?
4.
Councillor Rose.
4.
Councillor Sandham.
4.
Councillor Santamoro.
4.
Councillor Scattergood.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Swear.
4.
Councillor Spray.
4.
Councillor Tattersley.
4.
Councillor Thorogood.
4.
Councillor Unsworth.
4.
Councillor Van Dolken.
4.
Councillor Wallace.
4.
Councillor Walsh.
4.
Councillor Walters.
4.
Councillor Weeks.
4.
Councillor Wilson.
4.
Councillor Wrench.
4.
And Councillor Wright.
4.
Thank you, members.
Thank you very much. Andy, have you finished?
Yes, I've finished, Chairman.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you. I make that unanimous. Is that what you're saying?
No, it wasn't unanimous,
Okay.
Chairman.
What was it again?
No, Chairman, if I may, the outcome was 4. There was one against I recorded.
So it's
It's in
unanimous.
No, there's one
it's
against
in
and one
so
in
it's just one
favour.
against. Okay, that's a shame. That ought to make it nearly unanimous, didn't it? With only one against. Anyway, it's not unanimous, but the recommendation has been approved. Thank you very much, members. I'll say again, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. All comments are going to be recorded in the minutes. And thank you, Councillor Mrs. Schmidt and members. Before I go to item 7, by your silence, would you all like to tell me if you'd like the 5-minute only, 5 minutes, quick break?
No.
Councillor Scattergood, you'd like to carry on?
Yes. Yes.
But other than Councillor Scattergood, is there anybody else? No.
Chairman, on the chat function, I understand Councillor Walsh has indicated, together with second by Councillor Butland, in terms of having a break. So I
Right,
don't know
then
if
we're
she
going
wants
to
to
have
take
a
the break.
We are going to have it. But it's only 5 minutes, so be quick about it. See you in 5 minutes.
Chairman, please can I ask the webcast officer to temporarily suspend the council's transmission of this meeting on the YouTube channel at 21:08.
We're now live again. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, members. Members, thank you very much for taking that 5-minute adjournment to enable you to refresh after the agenda item 6. Chairman, I can confirm that the meeting is quorate. We do have one member who will be rejoining the meeting as soon as possible. I will readmit those as soon as I see them in the waiting room. Chairman, thank you very much. Could I hand back over to you for agenda item 7? Thank you. Your microphone's muted, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And that is, of course, the draft cycling strategy. It's set out on pages 31 to 58 of your agenda. And I would tell you that at this point we have 59 minutes. So all chew along on that before we get to our final time that we think is the best time. Before inviting Councillor Ritchie, Cabinet Member for Communities, Culture and Tourism, to introduce this report and to move the recommendations set out on page 31 of the agenda, for this item, as with the last, we're seeking an open debate on this draft cycling strategy and would encourage members to contribute, not repeating what somebody else has said. I will again repeat and remind myself. So, Councillor Ritchie, would you please proceed?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening, members. I am proud to introduce to you this evening the draft cycling strategy and hope we can agree on the recommendations set out for referring the strategy to further stakeholder engagement and our approach for achieving this. This draft cycling strategy has been the work of a group who have represented the community, business and cycling enthusiasts across the district, as well as having cross-party involvement from across this council. We have also had support from colleagues at Essex County Council, who are our transport authority, who have provided advice and expertise to draft the strategy. I'd personally like to thank council officers for their time and effort, particularly Ben Fryer from Essex County Council, Cherry Root and Dominic Collins from our own council, but I'd also like to mention a few more, namely Councillor James Abbott, Councillors Miss Jackie Pell, Councillor David Mann and Councillor Dean Wallace for their time, support and contributions. I'd also like to give some special thanks to Peter Cohn and Chris McCann, who as members of the public with a passion for cycling have helped immensely with giving advice on the draft proposals. Over the last 4 months, we have researched national and local policies and schemes and have identified the priorities that we need to focus on. This has led to the production of a detailed draft strategy that we can engage with our communities on to pull in their ideas and have a collective and agreed way forward for this important area of work. Excuse me. Whilst we may not be the Transport Authority and traditionally have not been leading on cycling projects, we feel that this is a crucial area of work to enable us to meet our objectives in relation to climate change, sustainable transport in our growth and local plans, and support people to live healthy and active lives. I make no apologies for wanting to be ambitious with our strategy. This is an area we can ill afford to ignore, and we must and will deliver. We will work closely with our communities and local businesses to achieve this, and will also give us a unique opportunity to support Essex County Council as the local transport authority. By setting out our intent to increase cycling, we can use our community leadership role to help make this happen. Madam Chairman, our aim is for this strategy to go out to public engagement in May following the Purdah period, and for it to return to Council in July 2021. The timescales for pulling this together have been tight and in challenging circumstances, and to meet our goals, we will need to continue to set demanding milestones and deadlines. So I again, before closing, would like to take this opportunity to thank all elected members involved in this group, the wider members from our business community, cycling enthusiasts and wider community representatives, as well as officers for their time and contributions that they have made to get us to this point. This strategy will be the start of our work, and I look forward to working with all partners to pull together an action plan after the strategy is finalised. Along with our high ambition to deliver, I must caution one point just to keep us grounded. Please be mindful that we do not have infinite funds to deliver everything ourselves. We will need to prioritise schemes that make the most difference. We will need to work with Essex County Council and other partners to make best use of wider public funding, and look at innovative ways to fund future projects as set out in the strategy. There will, of course, be some quick wins and some low-hanging fruit that we can achieve, and it's our plan to use these as examples to state our intent in showing what we can do to deliver on our strategy and maintain this momentum. I look forward to the discussion this evening and indeed the future engagement with our communities to help us deliver sustainable, safe and green travel across our towns and villages. Finally, the two recommendations as set out on page 31 of this evening's agenda read as: to agree the Council will carry out a 6-week stakeholder engagement on the draft cycling strategy, and 2, to approve the Council's engagement approach and timescales as set out on this report. I so move them both. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ritchie. Members, Councillor Ritchie has moved the recommendations set out on page 31 of the agenda. Can I now have a seconder, please?
Formally seconded, Madam Chairman, and reserve the right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckland. Do any members wish to speak on this item? If you do, please indicate by chat, and I do have people coming up already. And I'm going to start with Councillor Abbott. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I'd start off with the same comments really as I made on the draft climate change strategy, just wondering what will be picked up from our deliberations and statements this evening in terms of what goes out to consultation. And I won't say as much as I did on the previous one, but there are a few points of fact in there which it would be good to capture before it goes out to consultation. I think the main thing I would say is this draft strategy, with genuine due respect to everyone involved, does seem more comprehensive than the climate change strategy. And so, Madam Chairman, you'll probably be delighted to learn I've got less to say in terms of improvements on it. I think page 4 should mention the cycle movement opportunities between villages and towns as well as within them. As I said, for the climate change strategy, and as is well known, a Green Independent Group ambition is if we can deliver a comprehensive cycling network that connects towns and villages, it will be a real game changer. I would especially welcome on page 8 the honesty that's set out in the first paragraph. It simply recognises what we all know, that there is a current lack of cohesion in existing routes and there are access limitations. So I take on board what the cabinet members said about, you know, what we're going to have to do in terms of finding funding and the extent of what faces us. But as per climate change, we need to be ambitious. On page 11, the document says that modal shift to active transport is one of the most cost-effective ways of reducing transport emissions. That's absolutely correct. But again, I'll make the same point as I did on the climate change debate. Why then does the lion's share of transport money in this district go into road building and not into alternatives? It's not, I'm not saying the majority needs to go into walking and cycling. It's about the balance, I think, between the two. Pages 14 and 15 spell out all too clearly, and I won't go through all the bullet points, but if you look on there, what's set out in the Essex Transport Strategy 2011, so clearly that's 10 years old now, those aims have largely failed. If you go through them and sort of put a, you know, score them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, most of them are right down at low scores. It just hasn't delivered. We already have about 250,000 miles of roads in Great Britain, and yet the bulk of transport funding in this district and Essex still goes onto the roads. So as I say, the balance is wrong. We need to have a game-changing amount of money that we put into cycling and walking. And I think there's enormous pent-up demand at the margin. People will use that. So many people would say to me, I'd love to be able to cycle to work from Silver End to Witham, or, you know, from another place to Braintree, but simply I don't dare to because the roads are too dangerous. On a few points of factored information, a bit like I did with the previous debate, on page 17, I was interested to learn that Witham Town Centre is located on, quotes, an area of highest elevation. I would suggest that needs amending because I've not noticed that the last time I was in Witham Town Centre, where it's quite low down near a river. Will we be getting, I believe this is the case, but if the cabinet member could confirm, any sort of maps to back up the text? So for example, on page 17 will be a map to show the current national cycling network routes. The objectives on page 19 and 20 are very good. Again, on page 22, the interurban routes need to mention the relationship to villages and railway stations to be consistent with the rest of the document. On page 25, the aspiration for cycling to be a priority over motorised transport in new developments. But as I sit on planning committee, and as members know, we often get new developments where the amount of cycling infrastructure we're getting coming with them is really quite minimal. So currently that's not really being delivered. All that said, overall, this is a very good start. And I, for one, look forward to engaging with and hearing all the responses to the consultation. And I hope this can be a game changer now in terms of cycling provision, which, as I say, I think there's an enormous pent-up demand for. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Garrod, I have, followed by Councillor Horner. Councillor Garrod.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm quite excited about this cycling strategy and will be supporting it. When I speak with residents in the Bumpstead ward about their cycling habits, I'm often met with a list of negative barriers, and I'm pleased to see that this strategy seeks to tackle these in a holistic way. I'm particularly interested in the inclusion of the quiet lanes, as in my ward, it's very rural and speeding traffic is a huge problem in villages and along our country lanes, some of which are used as rat runs to Stansted. The designation of quiet lanes is a positive step to reduce the intimidating effects of traffic so that people can enjoy the environment with greater safety and make those shorter journeys without a carbon footprint. So not only for cyclists, but also for walkers and horse riders and the mobility impaired. I'll certainly encourage parish councils in my ward to participate in the consultation and consider the transport problems in my area, and if quiet lane designation might be appropriate to solve some of these issues. So thank you very much. Yes, I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Now Councillor Horner, followed by Councillor Hensman.
Thank you, Chairman. Oddly enough, I also want to speak on the quiet lanes. I think this is a very good joint scheme with Essex County Council, and there's quite a lot of potential for it over a long period. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hensman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. With regard to the push for more cycle paths and footpaths, a great ambition for a district-wide network to enjoy what we have in a different way, especially where paths currently end on roads on the wrong side. I would like to suggest that we take into account the importance of proportionality within the towns to prevent further loss of trade for local and national retailers in our towns. Can we ensure that we don't drive all motorists out of the town centres by making cycle paths and footpaths dominant to the detriment of those who are unable to cycle or walk to the town centre premises? Perhaps it would be timely to consider grade separating shared space within these areas. Members may also be aware of the government bikeability scheme, and I wonder whether this council would consider doing something as part of this. Cycling is more than riding a bicycle, as well as education that the rules of the road apply to cyclists. It now extends beyond the cycling proficiency that many of us did as youngsters and includes cycling safety, bike maintenance, and much more. Setting something up will reinforce this council's commitment to cycling. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to call Councillor Beavis next, and then Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted to speak specifically on the Housestead to Ellescombe to Coggeshall cycle path. I attend the meetings as County Councillor and not as member of the group. But I would agree with the previous statement. I mean, these are great cross-party collaborative groups of town and parishes and led by the community. And I would just like to agree with the comments previously made about Peter Cohen. I think he is a great innovator and he's doing some really great work on this path. I just wanted to make the point that Marks Hall has a new chairman, a gentleman called Jeff Dunn. And Jeff is a keen cyclist. And this year, Marks Hall are celebrating their 50-year anniversary. And they've made this cycle path their main project for support and funding. And it just sort of came to my thoughts, really. I know that Braintree District Council support and work with local business so well. And I think there's such an opportunity to work with Marks Hall to help promote the project in this special year. I just think, and I'm a regular walker at Marks Hall myself, when you know the opportunity is available after lockdown, I'll be there again. But it's such a key tourist destination, and I'd really like to hope that the District Council could support Marks Hall in this project. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Wright then.
Just unmute. Yeah, thank you for letting me speak. I also want to talk about quiet lanes. As mentioned on page 23, the only quiet lane which has been adopted is in Rivenhall, Rectory Lane. And yet it is being impacted by 3 developments, both ends, and a further 4th development, the full length of it. Should we not be protecting quiet lanes more? This lane is also part of the John May Walk. Only last week at this lane, one of the residents in our area was walking down there and they had to step aside for 6 commercial vehicles going between the developments. You know, if we've got quiet lanes, we need more. We need to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take Councillor Walsh, followed by Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think this is a really very good start. It's a very strategic document and it's involved a lot of communities. I just 2 comments really, very briefly. I think nonetheless, a fair bit of the focus in the report seems to be on cycling within towns and often the larger towns. And I'm a little surprised on page 16, the reference to hills as a disincentive to cycle. It does actually go on to admit the hills in our district are not particularly high. My main point at a strategic level, I think there should be a bit more focus on joining up rural communities, towns to towns and to villages and to hamlets, because quite often, as we know, public transport is not adequate. And particularly coming out of COVID, I think we should be giving people alternatives to getting back into their car. And developing on the comment by Councillor Joe Bevis, the Earlscombe to Kelvedon scheme is already one of the most advanced with the strong support of Marks Hall. And indeed, they've reached agreement in principle and in terms of, you know, taking it forward in terms of planning and Section 106 monies. And they hope eventually to go down to Kelvedon and in fact, westward, possibly to Halstead, where there have been some initial discussions. So I think that's a good scheme to mention, but I would hope there could be a bit more strategic emphasis on connecting up at times isolated communities outside the main towns. Thank you.
Thank you. So we go to Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I think this is a very good, comprehensive and thorough document, and congratulations to all involved in producing this. Just want to make a couple of comments. Firstly, about rural lanes. I mean, I think certainly in my ward, most cycling, if not all cycling, actually is for leisure purposes. And what I would like to see is a designated almost network of roads that are shared between traffic and cyclists, with signage that indicates to motorists that you're likely to come across cyclists. Because I think one of the greatest barriers to leisure cycling is this fear of safety. And I certainly know of cyclists who have had accidents involving cars, as I'm sure many others do. The other point I wanted to note, picking up some of the points we made tonight, is this point about connecting towns and villages. Now, I do accept that that will be suitable for some places, Silver End and Whittam is an obvious example, but I do think Councillor Ritchie's point at the beginning about cost is really important. We do have to be sensible about what we can achieve, whether it is worth the cost. I've seen plenty of examples of cycle lanes, not in this district, fortunately, but where you very, very rarely see a cyclist. And I hate to think how much each section of cycle path has cost per cyclist. So I do think we need to be sensible about looking at what is suitable and not try to necessarily connect everywhere. The other thing, just to bear in mind also, that obviously cycling is not suitable for everybody. It's not suitable for the very young or the people with limited mobility. And I think the critical factor we mustn't forget is that for a lot of people, the resource they're really short of is time. So I think cycling makes a lot of sense for shorter journeys, but I really do think trying to make cycling journeys for long distance, cycle paths for long distance, is really probably not a best use of council taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Wilson next, and then Councillor Everard.
Yeah, I just wanted to say very briefly that how pleased I was to be a member of Braintree District Council, and also the EC2K, the cycling committee, that are looking at expanding the number of cycling routes, etc., in the Braintree District. I've had a bike most of my life. In fact, I've had a bike all of my life, and I still have a bike. And the pleasure I and all my family have had from cycling is absolutely enormous. And knowing that safer routes, because it is quite hairy sometimes on some of these roads, are now going to be established, has definitely made me think twice about not selling my bike. From a point of view of a big pat on the back, I'd like to say thank you to Frankie Wickie and Braintree District Council, and also Peter Cohn, in the support that they are giving to all these committees to try, because it's buying land, it's quite a laborious process, and I think they're doing a brilliant job.
Thank you. Councillor Everard I have, followed by Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I heartily support this strategy, and I suppose in a way I'm talking about page 41. Being active is all important, and I do a lot of running, and I'm glad that I see that runners and walkers are also included. But with lots of new developments going on, it's important we don't miss remembering that that should all be in board with our new plans.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I welcome this cycling strategy that is being presented at full council this evening. Many members have spoken about the benefits to the climate, travel congestion, and community connectivity. But I'd like to speak about the benefits to health. As most members know, I'm a fitness instructor, and throughout this pandemic, one of the silver linings has been the increase in people getting out there and exercising. Cycling has many benefits, not only to our physical health, but to our mental health as well. And in this COVID age, it's more important than ever to look out for our mind as well as our body. And with this cycling strategy, this council can work with other authorities, cycling groups and residents to really put the power on the pedal and do some good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walters, and then Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm very keen to support this strategy. The long-term benefits to the residents and their families is invaluable for the future. Having been a cyclist myself, I am well aware of the benefits to health and mental well-being. And they are immeasurable. I will wholeheartedly support this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ball then.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I would like to very much support this. I'm very pleased to support this excellent initiative, even as a non-cyclist. But as Councillor Schmidt said earlier in the evening, for every positive there is a negative. I just wondered whether the possibility of crime and disorder or prevention of crime and disorder has been taken into account, and when it comes to the detail, that will be thought of, particularly for remote routes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Rose.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, like my colleagues, I shall be supporting this draft cycling strategy. I shan't give you a chapter and verse, but I passed my test for a car in 1966. That's probably when I hung my bike up, which to my immense shame. And in my various occupations, especially working for the Home Office as an officer, I used to run 6 miles every day. That no longer happens. I'm now in my mid-70s, as you probably know. But I just wondered if we couldn't ally this initiative with the climate change initiative by putting in cycle tracks and encompassing that with the developers. For instance, we could put a track from Cressing Railway Station to perhaps just opposite Conrad Road in Witham to build a small station there to relieve the pressure on the Eastern Road junction, which is horrendous at times. And to put these cycle tracks in, and also from the large development in the north of Witham around the Bellwire building, around that area, there's no cycle track from there into the town. Similarly, if people want to go to the supermarkets, they have to walk or predominantly take their car. I think perhaps I would like to see incorporated in this strategy, and I understand that we need to look at priorities, as Councillor Ritchie said. We need to look at affordability and delivery. But I think perhaps we could do or undertake some kind of survey to see where these cycle paths could go in, and to see what benefit it would be for recreational cycling, and also for to assist the climate change initiative to take some of the cars off the road, because they're only very short journeys and may not really be that necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I have nobody else in the queue. There's no queue anymore, but I do know that Councillor Butland, who seconded the recommendation, did not speak. So would you like to now speak, Councillor Butland?
No, Madam Chairman, I don't think I could add anything to what's been said. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's taken the wind out of my sails. Councillor Ritchie, then. You were the mover of the recommendation, and would you like to respond now to this excellent debate?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be really brief. First of all, just to pick up a couple of points, I obviously can't address them all, but I have been reliably informed that officers are fastidiously taking notes of everything that everyone said this evening, and they will, of course, be factored into this draft documentation. I can assure you of that. If you haven't spoken up but do think of something, then you haven't missed your chance. You will still obviously have an opportunity during the consultation phase. Just a couple of points that I will pick up on is, of course, we'll pick up on the area about Witham being high, as signalled by Councillor Abbott, and the maps that we are linking to some of this draft documentation. They were purposely kept out just to keep the document in a light format, bearing in mind we were going out to consultation. They will, of course, be reinserted at the appropriate time, so we've got a full document making links to additional photographs, graphs, etc., cycle routes. The point that Councillor Beavis made, of course, Marksall is a great landmark within our fine district. I can assure you that this authority has been engaged with the executive management team over at Marksall. I was invited to a meeting recently which was delegated to a senior planner and also, I believe, Emma Gooding, so we have a good representation there. And I think it'd be a missed opportunity if we don't link up some of our strategy with private strategy that is going on across private landowners. So we will have a look at linking that into this draft documentation too. Nothing further to add, Madam Chairman, other than to, again, just give the recommendations as set out in tonight's agenda. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ritchie. I'll now proceed then to the vote. The recommendation is set out on page 31 of the agenda. It's been moved and seconded. So again, we'll be conducting the votes by way of a roll call, and I'm going to hand over again to our Chief Executive, Andy Wright. Andy?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll call everybody's name out in the order again. So Councillor Abbott?
4.
Councillor Bore?
4.
Councillor Beavis?
4.
Councillor Bowers?
4.
Councillor Butland?
4.
Councillor Coleridge?
4.
Councillor Courtauld?
4.
Councillor Mrs Cunningham?
4.
Councillor Cunningham?
4.
Councillor Dervish?
4.
Councillor Euston?
4.
Councillor Everard?
4.
Councillor Garrett?
4.
Councillor Hensman?
4.
Councillor Hicks?
4.
Councillor Horner?
4.
Councillor Hume?
4.
Councillor Johnson?
4.
Councillor Kilmartin?
4.
Councillor Mann?
4.
Councillor McKee?
4.
Councillor Monday?
4.
Councillor Parker?
4.
Councillor Pell?
4.
Councillor Pritchard?
4.
Councillor Radley?
4.
Councillor Raymond?
4.
Councillor Ritchie?
4.
Councillor Rose?
4.
Councillor Sandham?
4.
Councillor Santamoro?
4.
Councillor Scattergood?
4.
Councillor Smith?
4.
Councillor Swear?
4.
Councillor Spray?
4.
Councillor Tattersley?
4.
Councillor Thorogood?
4.
Councillor Van Dulken?
4.
Councillor Wallace?
4.
Councillor Walsh?
4.
Councillor Walters?
4.
Councillor Weeks?
4.
Councillor Wilson?
4.
Councillor Wrench?
4.
And Councillor Wright?
4.
Thank you, members. Chairman, that's unanimous.
Yes, thank you very much, Andy. That is unanimous. The recommendation has been approved. Well, thank you very much, members. This item concludes our business for this extraordinary meeting of full council. Thank you to all members. I've said it once and I can say it again. I've thoroughly enjoyed both debates. Lots of really interesting points to take on. Thank you to members of the press and the public. And I wonder if I might say, you won't know this, and I hope she's managed to click on, but we have had with us an environmental research and strategist calling in from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. So Braintree District Council, well done. And those also viewing by YouTube, as indeed this lady had. Can I remind you that we have our next meeting of full council on the 29th of March 2021, not long away. The meeting will be the last ordinary meeting of full council before our annual general meeting. So I therefore thank my officers hugely once again, hugely, and I'm closing the meeting at 9, what? What?
9:47.
9:47. 9:47. And hand over to the meeting facilitator to conclude our closure of tonight. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, before we
Good
do
night,
actually
Chairman.
terminate the broadcast, please can I just pass on the apologies by Councillor Unsworth. Unfortunately, he lost his connection before the last item. And also we've had belated apologies given by Councillor McArdle. He did email those in during the course of the meeting, so we will record his apologies. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
And finally, members, we will retain performance data relating to your connections to this evening's meeting, just in case we do have a legal challenge. So webcasting officer, please can I invite you to terminate the broadcast on the council's YouTube channel, please?